Hey, everybody. Thanks for joining us on this Monday. Happy Monday, everybody. It's Trading Rebellion with Nick Mancini, Chief Community Officer and Director of Research at Trade the Chain, Monty and CJ, Senior Crypto Analysts, and pretty much market analysts all around over at marketrebellion.com. Lot happening today, a lot happening this week. Got going into earnings, got some macro events happening. I know that the guys want to cover some broad scope stuff to help everybody get kind of prepared into the individual trades. I feel like this week is more of a directional kind of week, rather than the individual stock picking week. So let's see here. Let's go into the macro real quick. 1.25 trillion in the crypto market cap, down a little under 2%. Bitcoin losing its $30,000 mark. We're going to talk about that further later in the show. But sentiment up to 51 neutral. Let me tell you something. I was doing my show yesterday with John and Mark, and sentiment was down to 39. So looking a little better. Ethereum still above $2,000. All the ETH maxis still happy. All the crap coiners still happy. And we're also going to discuss that as well, because that's a sector that a lot of people are talking about. Going into the boards here, pretty much kind of neutral to the way up, just slightly on the way up today. So we will see what happens with the rest of the week. And then later on in the show, we're going to discuss Bittrex. Big news on that. SEC coming down. So let's see. Nick, you want to take it away?
Yes, sir. So just quick recap on the macro side. For this week, we don't really have too much important data. We do have the all-important meme day of 420 coming up. So if you are focused on meme coins in crypto, 420 tends to be a day where they tend to get a good play. But when we're looking at macro data, nothing very significant. We do have, we'll get jobless claims, which will definitely may play into some volatility on Thursday, but nothing major other than just constant Fed gov speak. So if anybody recalls, whenever we have a gap in data, because we do not have PCE until next Friday, so pretty much, close to the end of the month, we have PCE coming out, which is pretty much the inflation metric as it pertains to how the Fed is tracking things. So that's obviously core to the macro situation, but we basically have 9 days of non-important data, and we have Fed governors speaking the entire time. So typically when we have a big boost from good inflation data, such as CPI and PPI obviously came in lower than expected. Now we have a gap in data. So nothing significant is really going on. So therefore, you would likely expect, the pullback that we saw today, and typically we'll see consolidation. So if we kind of just look at the Bitcoin charts, and zoom out on the daily to kind of how we talked about. Last time this happened, it was right around some data. Then we had a lack of data that basically caused us to consolidate in a bullish fashion, and then we broke out. So it would not surprise me over the next couple of weeks. I know I've got some squiggles that we'll talk about later, but I would expect to see some consolidation underneath the 31K level, maybe over the next week into the weekend. And then hopefully we get some more euphoria around the expectation of PCE. But right now, typically when Fed governors are lined up to speak and we don't have a lot of data, consolidation, a little bit of bearishness happens. So no surprise on what's going on with the charts. We obviously need to hold 29K. And we obviously need to hold 2030 for ETH, and we'll obviously dig into those charts in a second. So right now, macro looks neutral, which means likely consolidation for top cryptocurrencies. And we'll discuss a little bit about alts having some fun later on in the show as well. Alex, so you're on mute still.
I was just mimicking a mime. I'm good. You guys didn't get it. CJ, you're hitting this up. DXY.
Before hitting the macro indices as well as DXY, I want to throw a question to Nick regarding Bitcoin. How do you think the U.S. government selling Bitcoin, TWAPing, going into that consolidation? Have you thought about that, or does that play a role in the analysis?
Yeah, so if I'll bring my chart back up, and I'm going to go ahead and remove some lines. That way we don't get too confused here, because then most of those are related to lower time frames. But If we zoom into March 14th, so this day was the only confirmed sell that we had from the US government, and it marked a local top that day. We obviously rose higher. So CJ and I actually discussed this, I think on a Trading Rebellion show previously, that there is a theory of the US government possibly, creating this top right here around 28K, as well as creating the local top around 31K. So we have seen a lot of selling from the Coinbase side of things, which is what we understand the US government's, brokerage to sell the crypto. And we've seen a lot of buying from Asia. So if we actually, and I told the Trade the Chain community this last week, we've seen a lot of selling during US hours, and we've seen a lot of buying during Asia hours. And actually yesterday was the first kind of flip. We sold off around the Monday Asia Open, and obviously I've been selling off ever since because the US session seems to prefer selling as well. So it is very likely, although we do not have any confirmed data yet, that the US government is quote unquote painting these tops. And the data, does seem to indicate that it could be from them. But unfortunately, CJ, we do not have any of that confirmed data yet. I've been tracking, Binance versus Coinbase, which are obviously preferred Asian versus American exchanges, respectively. And obviously, you're seeing more selling on the Coinbase end. But I wish I had more information for that. I would assume we'd probably hear something in the near future about their sales, because I think we got the March 14th sale data around the beginning of April. So it was a 2 to 3 week lag. So we may see another 2 to 3 week lag before we learn more. But my indication, my opinion, is that it's likely the US government offloading their more than $1 billion worth of Bitcoin back at 28K prices.
That's a good question, CJ. And a lot of people always get scared when there's large dumps, right? I mean, the Mt. Gox release was this huge panic attack amongst retail investors. But the thing is I don't think none of us really get worried about it because of the absorption, that the market has been able to do over the last 24 months, particularly with the Asia crew. Asia people dump Bitcoin to the market. Asia just sucks it right up. So, it's interesting. I do have some spot exchange data on the various exchanges. Nick, I'm going to send that to you. They're in graphical form because I think it is really interesting to see how that all plays out. I'm still never going to let the government get away with the fact that they sent a Wells notice to Coinbase and then used them to sell their crap.
It still seemed to be. And CJ, just to further that point, CZ, I think, also refreshed his BTC ETH and BNB fund. It was running low when we spoke last week, and I believe I saw a notification that it was back up to another $100 million. So, he's refreshing the fund. And it clear is that, due to intelligent market activity, meaning he's, buying low, selling high, then kind of pulling those profits back in the market. But, CZ does seem to have unlimited ammo right now. And the US government doesn't. So we'll have to see.
Yeah. And sorry to get off on a tangent here, but while we're talking about the US government and Bitcoin, I just don't understand why they have such urgency to sell it. To me, it feels like it's almost like a Cold War scenario where they'd be wanting to be stacking as much Bitcoin as possible, because Russia and China are stacking Bitcoin, like from a government perspective. You know that's happening. I hope that we're doing the same, but if we're not, if we're continuing to just TWAP into these prices that are not too far off the lows. I mean, this is a decent time to sell, sure, but what are they trading Bitcoin? No, they're just selling it and not planning on buying more, and that to me is concerning from like an American citizen standpoint perspective.
My thing is, it's definitely, I think the U.S.
Agreed.
is looking, at least the current administration and the way that they look at things, especially, the left wing is definitely the one to pound the chest in terms of democracy versus communism, or, the freedom versus, tyranny or whatever, whether or not, they actually keep track of American history throughout the years. But considering that's their typical outlook, is, if these countries that are the quote unquote anti-democratic nations are adopting this, then we must not adopt it because it's anti-democratic and it's anti good institution. So that perspective is obviously typically incorrect historically, and is typically only take several years, and at least in the past 100, for governments to learn that mistake. But I think that's just currently where it is. And I think if no politician, no government administration does not want to lose their footing, or decrease the amount of conviction that they have towards a viewpoint, because if they do, they'll get lampooned for it later down the road, and called hypocrites and whatever. So it's better to stick to your guns and call something bad than it is to admit you're wrong and change course. So I think that's my personal opinion of kind of what's happening.
We're all debating this, and the CIA's got the Satoshi wallet, so it's all good as Americans. And if they want to sell some Bitcoin so they can, send money to the Ukraine, then that's probably what they're doing. All right, with all seriousness, let's get to the indices, and let's move
I'm
on.
sorry, we interrupted CJ's fishing trip.
Hold on. Our special guest CZ is coming on to tell us exactly what's going on. So go ahead, CJ.
All right. So each week we get new COT data, or positioning data, within the futures market, which I like to look at as a microcosm of the entire market. We talked about being long Dow last week, and that's the position that Monty and I have kind of talked about in our community throughout the past couple weeks as well. If you can see the green small speculators, or large speculators, they got less long, so they covered a lot of shorts last week. And you can see red, the commercials, got a lot less long last week as well. So one indice that didn't have that type of shift in positioning was ES. If you can look, or if you can see the red pillar right here, there's a ton more longs opened up in terms of commercials. And what's interesting to me is that retail, this yellow bar, has switched from being net long to, again, now net short ES. And typically we always want to be doing the opposite of retail. NASDAQ, as you can see, commercials have gotten a lot less long in the past couple of weeks. So that's probably the place I would be looking to get short when the time comes. As you can see, small speculators or retail are still short NASDAQ. So I'm generally not going to take that trade, or I'm just not going to take that trade if retail's on that side. DXY, you see a lot of shorts stacking up in terms of large speculators. Also, when you look at the euro positioning and the British pound positioning, it has confluence. There's a ton of people betting on like the death of the dollar, which really doesn't make sense to me, because 6 months ago, the dollar was king, and that's all anyone talked about until SBF listed DXY futures on FTX and topped the price. Regardless, this is an interesting analysis in terms of positioning. So I've closed my Dow long last night, and I rolled it into an ES long last night as well. That position is down a little bit. But I do want to show you guys kind of the DXY positioning and how I would hedge this S&P futures long. So if we look at, I actually skipped one thing. What's very important, aside from just looking at this raw data, you want to look at relative rates of change within the data. And so we have an oscillator that will do that. Anytime the value of the oscillator is at 100, that's when I'm looking for longs. Seeing the number in and of itself isn't enough to just purely get long. We need some technical confirmation as well. I exited the Dow, as you can see. It used to be at 100 for like the past 3 weeks. Now it's gone back to 80 and a little bit more neutral. So closed Dow and longed ES based on that. As you can see with NASDAQ, we've been heading down towards 100. And once we get to the 0 level or below 10, I'll be looking to short NASDAQ. DXY, on the other hand, this is kind of interesting because you don't typically see positioning with ES and the DXY similar. As you can see, 94 right here and 100 up here. So the way that I like to hedge the ES trade is in the FX market. Although there's probably a couple different markets I could do it in. But looking at DXY very quickly, you can see defined risk on the weekly chart. It's beginning. And so let's look at Euro should basically reflect that pretty well because it's 50% of the DXY. And this has been flashing longs for, or shorts, excuse me, for quite a while. As you can see, look at how long retail is and the large speculators. Everybody's betting on the death of the dollar, whether it happens or not, I don't know. But if it doesn't happen, all these people are going to be forced to cover. And so last thing I will bring up is British pounds. Sterling is in a good position for a short as well. You can see 0 on this particular oscillator. And retail speculators are long. So I do the opposite of them. And I think the beauty of that is even if one of those positions doesn't work for me, like for instance, let's say I get stopped out of ES and the DXY skyrockets this week, then my losses will be cut decently on ES and I'll still be able to cover them with that potential short in British pound or basically a long in DXY. So that's kind of how I like to hedge positioning. I'm not betting on direction. I'm betting on the positioning. That's basically my edge. Last thing I'll say in terms of gold, we talked about that last week. Gold did an excellent job of stopping me out before crashing about 2-3% this morning. So that's always going to happen. But I hope you can get an idea of how I'm kind of thinking about markets in terms of positioning. I know I said that was the last thing I'll say, but I don't truly believe, I think it would be uncharacteristic to see the equity market top before people gave up shorting it. So in other words, I need to see those shorts come back to neutral before I think about shorting the S&P 500. We might have a little bit of a pullback or a bullback this week, but is it going to be substantial? Is it going to be enough? I don't think it will until every short covers. And, you know, you saw that in 2000. You saw that in a lot of market cycles. So.
All right, CJ, that was comprehensive. I like that. Thank you.
Yeah, good stuff, CJ. Thank you. I want to go ahead and set the stage for the altcoins. And, you know, I've talked about this a lot recently, and it's kind of become my niche, my niche. And Alex suggested that I change my handle on Twitter to Bitcoin Dom. But I don't want people thinking I'm some sort of like dominatrix or anything like that. So
I
that's
still
not
think
going to be
that's
happening.
the best name ever.
There probably already is.
You definitely get an interesting follower base, that's for sure, Monty. You might see the engagement change a little bit.
There probably already are several Bitcoin dominatrix out there. I'm sure of it. Crypto guys and dominatrix. All right. Anyways, let's move on. I want to talk about Bitcoin dominance, not Bitcoin dominatrix. And Bitcoin dominance is at a very interesting point. We're coming right up against the smooth moving average. And last Thursday, Nick and I were talking a lot about this and how this is kind of a gauge of risk for the altcoins, right? You can look at this. For those of you that don't know, this is just the percentage of the total crypto market cap that is comprised of Bitcoin at any given time. And as you can see, it's been basically a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 day slide where we've seen Bitcoin dominance falling. Now, that could mean one of two things. That could mean either, Bitcoin is underperforming the market and we're seeing altcoins outperform relative to Bitcoin, which would be indicative of a risk on market, or we'd be seeing the exact opposite. And this would be a risk off market and everything's selling off really hard. For example, back here, June. This is June 12th or so. This day here was our largest down move in Bitcoin dominance that we've actually ever had. And it was marked by extreme underperformance of the altcoins. If we look at ETH or any altcoin on that day, it was down tremendously relative to Bitcoin. But Bitcoin dominance was still falling. So that may be another scenario that's happening, here is Bitcoin's falling. It's just falling less than the alts. And there's a lot of alts that we've talked about, guys. Things like, CFX, some others we can get into later that look very weak and look like they could give a lot back to the market. But at the same time, we have this, which we've also talked a lot about, Nick, and continuing to look strong. This is the ETH BTC pair. So I think what you need to do, and this is what CJ and I have been talking about in our community, and something that has been prevalent in all of the last crypto market cycles, is identify the altcoins that are resilient, which essentially involves identifying the next trend or the next theme in the market. And one theme that seems to be pretty prevalent right now, clearly from this ETH performance, but is liquid staking derivatives. So if I had to bet on coins, one that you don't want to short, like if the alts do really start to crash hard, I think liquid staking derivatives might be a place where you see some positive price action. So things like Lido, things like Arbitrum, I think you could see some positive price action based on this ETH BTC chart, and also in conjunction with what we're seeing from that Bitcoin dominance chart. So getting back to that Bitcoin dominance chart, I mean, this is clearly a critical level. We're either going to, break down and Bitcoin dominance will fall, which means we might see some coins that, like the ones I just mentioned, either run, or Bitcoin, falls 2% while ETH falls, 1% or something like that. But that's some possible scenarios for, Bitcoin dominance. But I think from an ETH BTC perspective, it's looking pretty interesting. I think you need to pick and choose your alts carefully here. Not all of them are going to perform the same. And I think right now it's super important to pick ones that have been resilient, ones that have shown signs of resiliency. And I'm sure CJ and Nick have a couple in mind that they'd like to hit.
I just wanted to add to your liquid staking theme. Rocket Pool,
yeah.
I don't think has had a down day. Have you guys been following that one at all? I mean, there's some very under the radar alts that have just been going parabolic. INJ is another one, not a liquid staking derivative. So yeah, Rocket Pool, and then FXS. Frax, yeah. So those two, those three, Lido might be a little overdone, but those two have really, they're in that ETH ecosystem theme.
Right. And that's what the market loves, is themes. Think about 2021. It was all about layer ones. It was all about, alternative layer ones to ETH. Solana, Binance Chain, AVAX. CJ, let's see that t-shirt.
Yeah, let's see that t-shirt, CJ.
You AVAX.
I couldn't have brought it up.
CJ's got a VIP ticket to the conference on May 3rd. He's a speaker.
It's going to be a long time before I go to another crypto conference because we need prices higher before. But yeah, it's an AVAX.
They don't give tickets to AVAX whales, CJ. Come on.
No, they just send the whales t-shirts like that. That's why CJ's got that.
That's how they keep them involved.
Yeah, but, I've got one. My favorite shirt is Uranium Energy. I don't know if you guys ever heard of the company by UEC. That's the ticker symbol, Uranium Energy Corporation. And I don't know why I'm bringing that up, but we were talking about shirts for some reason. Let's talk about stuff that actually matters.
Well,
okay, thanks, Nick.
I just wanted to follow up CJ and Monty, because I think we're going to talk about a few alts that we're watching. I just wanted to give a little bit of a basic update on how I'm viewing Bitcoin and ETH heading into the week. So typically what you'll see on a Sunday sell-off into Monday, and obviously we continued the sell-off into the US Open session, is the best way to look at this is your Monday range. And typically your Monday range will play out throughout the entire week. So this is where kind of, this is our high. Obviously, this is our low, and these are the benchmarks for the week. So what I had originally drawn for the TTC community is if we, this previous range right here, we're obviously catching on top of that range. We dipped into it a little bit, immediately bought back, nothing convincing yet. We still have this VWAP that we need to get above, also coincides with the 1 hour estimated 200 moving average. So do something like that, reclaim the VWAP, reclaim the estimated 200 moving average, or we end up, well, I would assume we'll probably likely get back up to 29.7, just the way that this is looking. And then if that happens, then we may get rejected, and then we play down here for a recovery higher. And obviously, if you can get above the VWAP and the estimated 200 moving average, now you're in the top half of the range, which is exactly where you want to be to head to the top of the range. And then from the top of the range is when you either break up and higher or deviate and form a potential double top, very similar to what we saw up here. So that's how I'm looking at Bitcoin. We could certainly drop lower if we break below 29.3. We can certainly dip all the way down to 29 flat or 28.8, which is obviously the high from the previous range that we're in. So, there's a lot of possibilities for Bitcoin right now. I'm not in any trades, but if we can hold the 29.3 level, and I would basically, my trigger for the next trade is either a reclaim of 29.8 or a rejection at 29.8, which I would then look for the equal lows, because typically we'll see a sweep of the lows before we head higher. None of this has to happen, but that's how you're typically looking at different trades building up. And then looking at ETH, the lines are still here from what I drew for the TTC community. We were down at about, 2070, 2060 when I drew this. So the first step was, of course, reclaim the VWAP, and then we can head to the previous daily close of 2120. If we get rejected at the VWAP, which is literally where we're at right now, the VWAP is what we're sitting directly under. It's that blue line. If we get rejected here, then we'll come back down to either this low, or we will start to sweep the previous low of last week, or potentially get back to the high of this range. So no trade yet. If we get above the VWAP, I'm longing. If we are confirmed rejected from the VWAP, I probably will not trade because it's so tight. But if we break below the 2070 level, then I'll start to think about shorts down to 2050. But in my opinion, I think everyone on here is still bullish for the time being. So it's better to just let, another 12 to 24 hours play out, see how the daily close comes in, see how the US opens tomorrow. Then you can potentially enter some trades based on where price is hovering around either the VWAP or previous support for Bitcoin and Ethereum. So just a couple of, quick call outs for how to look at both assets this week.
All right.
I want to hear your guys' opinion on altcoins and what we were talking about resilient altcoins. Give me 2 or 3 that you think are the most resilient or have been.
Easy. One is Didex, because decentralized exchanges are continuing to accumulate volume due to Bybit is now doing KYC. We've obviously seen multiple exchanges leave the United States. There's a greater emphasis on decentralized trading, and more volume on an exchange will equal more revenue, which is good for the token. Number 2 is INJ. INJ, Injective Protocol, has I believe a $150 million innovation fund. If anybody remembers AVAX or any of the top alts of 21 and 22, they all had 9-digit innovation funds, and they were the best performers in the market. INJ has been deploying their innovation fund, and INJ is now sitting just under $10 from sitting around $2 or $3 in the beginning of the year. One of the best performers. Don't expect it to stop, but it may chill out a little bit up here. And then number 3 is AVAX, which CJ is the notable whale on the call. And they have a May 3rd conference they have a summit, and typically prices for these types of assets will rise going into the summit. So the summit's on May 3rd. So you've got about 2 more weeks, a little bit over that, for potentially bullish price action. So those are the 3 alts that I am mainly glued to due to those narratives.
Hold on. Could you please bring that altcoin season chart back up? I have a question about, so does this mean we want to be holding Bitcoin right now since we're in Bitcoin season?
It says we're in Bitcoin season.
But that you can also treat that as inverse too, because similar to sentiment, when sentiment is below 20, typically you look at, so it's super bearish, I should short it. Well, no, it's becoming the most bearish it can possibly be, which means, typically a reversal is right around the corner. So 16 is pretty effing low and historically one of the lows. So if you're looking at that, you might want to take a contrarian focus.
Here, I'll drop this link into the chat for everybody to take a look at. It's a pretty interesting page here. But you have here the top 50 performances over the last season, 90 days. QNT falling at the bottom. 8 falling third from the bottom. Yeah, interesting. And number 1, STX. Oh, look at that. This is interesting. Yeah, I'm gonna play around with this and some of these reports. Yeah.
Speaking to the decentralized exchanges, have you guys noticed on GMX that like their leverage has been getting like maxed out? Like if you go to if you try to do an ETH long, you can't put in more than like 2 or 3x. Have you guys, Alex, you're shaking your head. Have you tried this at all?
Yeah, no, it's I guess it's probably been the last week and a half since I've been popping in and out that their leverage positions are resizing the calculation. And I don't know what the deal is with that. And I saw some chatter on Twitter about it, but I haven't delved into it yet.
Yeah, the counterparty risk kind of concerns me.
That's exactly it.
I don't have any big funds or anything. I'm not a whale. I'm a guppy.
I've honestly never used GMX, so I can't speak to it.
Yeah, I like it. It's it works well on your phone. DYDX is just, it's got better option. I don't know. Let's talk about Monty. Give me your 3 altcoins.
Well, hold on a second, Monty. I want Monty. CJ, I already know what his answer is going to be, but listen, longing into the Avalanche Conference on May 3rd, is that something that might be a smart move?
Yeah, I think it is. Like Nick said, whenever you have these conferences, you tend to have people, the community, the AVAX community, the people
shit, look at that sell candle. I'm sorry to interrupt that, Monty. That's just a freaking look at the last sell candle after zoom out a little bit more, Alex. Go back because let me see that March 13 candle or the 12. Zoom in a little bit. I want to see the March 12th. Okay, so
March
look at
12th?
go right. Yeah, go back to where you were. So look at the current sell volume candle. Look how massive that is. Now look at the previous one that was compared to this one. Exactly right there, Alex. So sell off, that sell candle was basically the bottom. And there was a little bit more selling, and then it did a 50% higher?
Yeah, we went from
30% higher.
Yeah,
so
if
that 20.5 level can hold for AVAX, then that's pretty good precedent right there for a potential rise back to new highs.
It's double the height.
Is that an index chart or is that just DYDX volume? Because are there really AVAX whales trading on DYDX, or
I'll check Binance.
Is that a confluence with Binance?
I'm checking Binance volume now.
Listen, this is DYDX right here. So it's going to be localized volume, I believe, right, Nick?
Yeah, no, you're right. Since good point there, CJ. That is just a DYDX chart. I'm seeing a larger than average amount of sell volume on the recent hourly candle on Binance, but nothing comparative to DYDX.
Here, pull up your Tradingview.
Sorry, I was on a different window. AVAX. So, so if we look at the, slightly larger than typical sell volume candle, but nothing out of the ordinary. So.
Oh, well, back to GMX it is.
I mean, that's still significant, though, that DYDX volume is like that, right? Because, I mean, regardless, like you pointed out, Nick, last time we had a sell candle volume like that, it did mark the bottom, and it was followed by a subsequent 50% increase in price. And one thing that you typically will see with decentralized exchanges is the people that are using those exchanges are more deep into crypto. They're the more sophisticated user.
Yeah.
So to see them, recognizing that that's a large amount of sell volume, then absorbing that sell volume, allowing price to go higher, I think is still very much worth noting. So
Well,
even though it's
And
just
on the
DIDEX volume,
12th, Binance had the same sell volume that DIDEX had. So it's not the same today, but they had the same sell volume candle on the 12th. So
oh, okay. So yeah, so if we see that supply absorption, which it looks like we're kind of getting already, because given the amount of volume we're seeing on DIDEX today and in the last 48 hours, particularly sell volume, it's still holding up price. You have the bullish catalyst of a conference coming up in less than 2 weeks. I think that marks this as a buy, all things considered. So, yeah,
AVAX is
I
number
think
14 on Upbit right now.
number 14 on Upbit. So
I
the Koreans.
was just about to ask you what's on that list right now.
So the
Arbitrum's
Koreans
number
are,
one.
Arbitrum's
It's
number one.
one
Yeah.
for like, all right, something that really worried me about Arbitrum, and don't get me wrong, forget the long
lot of
price
things.
actions. I think it's still going higher. I think it's going to become a blue chip like ADA or something.
Wow.
Well, my
I
worry
saw
is that
enrollment.
why is Arbitrum gonna double Optimism's market cap? Because it's right now it's the highest L2 market cap.
Yeah, I mean,
So let's see where OP is sitting at.
Arbitrum
Optimism is
I
number
was worried about-
62 at an $800 million market cap, and Arbitrum is. I'm sorry, I'm just taking a while to sort. Arbitrum is a $2 billion market cap, so it's already double Optimism.
Yeah.
More than double in terms of market. We're not talking about fully diluted either. Wait, that's a meme. We're just talking about available supply.
Yeah, I mean, we don't have any unlocks really in Arbitrum, I think, for the rest of the year. And it's always difficult to say these relative value things in crypto because it's like, okay, is Arbitrum overvalued and is Optimism undervalued? Or,
That's a good point.
ADA is $26 billion. Okay. Anything is undervalued relative to that.
I think optimism is undervalued. I mean, that's my personal opinion. I'm a little bit of an optimism. I have some optimism about optimism.
Do you use Quenta? Have you ever traded on there? I like that.
I have not.
It's a nice DEX on Nick. How about you?
I'm just trying to think about the bull narrative, and I guess if you go and look at like DeFi Llama, and we go look at the chains, we talk about like total value locked on all the chains. So ETH has 31 billion, Arbitrum has 2 billion, BSC has 5 billion. So if we just go and kind of compare that to what it's looking like on CoinMarketCap, BNB is a $53 billion company. They have 5 billion total value locked. Ethereum is a $250 billion company. They have 6x the amount of value locked. So if we times 50 million times 6, you're actually BNB is a bit overvalued in direct comparison to ETH. So if ETH is a $250 billion asset and it has $30 billion worth of things on it, and Optimism has Optimism has 1 billion total value locked, that means it's 1/30th of ETH. So what's 1/30th of 250 million? I can't do that math that quickly in my head. 250 times 0.3. That is 75 million or 75 billion. So in that standpoint, oh wait, I'm sorry, that's not the correct way to think about it.
83.
So we would need 1/30th of 250 billion divided by 30 is 8.
It's like we're trying to approach this so logically, and then you look at like XRP, Dogecoin, whatever else is in the top 10 that is like no good reason to. This market is stupid still. Like there's inefficiencies in the way that things are valued, which creates potential opportunity. Let's see.
Okay, so with the comparison, Arbitrum should be a $20 billion token with that direct comparison. So we're looking at BNB is a little bit overvalued, but is still within that value comparison. So in this standpoint, maybe this is why people are so bullish on Arbitrum, is just from that direct standpoint of ETH being a $250 billion asset with 30 billion value locked, and ARB has $1 billion value locked. So it's 1/30th So it should move higher from here, which
Speaking
just
of
based
moving
on that
higher,
comparison. But again, like CJ said, we're being too logical. So
I think looking at those limits is really good for price targets and trying to project how much something could grow. But I've lost money in the past or I've missed opportunities in the past saying this is value, this is, relatively valued relative to something else. And you never really know, I think. It all gets caught up in the pump.
Yeah. So, and again, my math was a bit off there. Arbitrum, the final number is, if for the direct comparison, is Arbitrum would be an $8 billion company. If there was a direct comparison to ETH, it's a $2 billion company now. So 4x is reasonable if the total value locks continues today. So that's my final math number. Apologies for all that quick math on the fly.
8.333333 billion to be exact.
So what does that equate to in terms of our bags?
It would be about a 4x from here.
What's that going to do to
That's all I needed to know.
Well, just multiply them by 4, CJ, and that's how much. That's your bag. That's how heavy your bag will be. I actually want to talk about. Well, Nick was actually touching on this a little bit, but moving out from the liquid staking derivatives theme, if you could go ahead and pull up my chart, Alex. I still think Binance Coin has some really nice technicals. We've seen these continued higher highs, and that's what I look for in an asset that's like showing strength into a relatively weak market. Is we had this high put in here, and then we climbed above it here, and then we climbed above it just again yesterday in the last 48 hours. And we've talked a lot about how important the Eastern participants are, and they're risk on right now. The Kospi, look how incredibly strong that's been, and it's no coincidence that Binance Coin has also been strong during that same period of time. That is not a coincidence. That is because when those markets are risk on, people will be willing to take on more speculative risk with cryptos. And one that they love over in Asia and that I love here is Binance Coin. It's not, this is one that I would consider a blue chip token. Binance is a massive exchange and sees incredible volume. And CZ, I think, does a great job managing the company. They're one of the, few survivors, and they're the largest exchange in the world. And, with them, continuing to TWAP into this as well, I think it all sets up for some potentially very positive price action in a very short amount of time. Look at this wick right here. Wicked up to $400 before wicking back down, of course. But that being said, there's very little resistance between current price and that $400 level. So not saying that that's going to be hit immediately, but honestly, by end of week, if we see continuation of strength in the Eastern indices, if we see the Kospi continue to look strong, which it, very may well, and if we see things like the Nikkei, switch to this. And if we see things like the Nikkei continue to, look strong and show signs of bullish price action, then I think Binance Coin continues to run. So that's one that I think, beyond the liquid staking derivatives, from purely a technical perspective and from a perspective of being correlated with Eastern indices, which we talk so much about, and their influence on these markets. That's why Nick always checks Upbit first. I think Binance is one that could plausibly have a nice run very quickly, and it's kind of outside of the realm of the liquid staking derivatives assets that we've been talking about. If you want one that's like high beta, like crazy, CJ mentioned it earlier, but Rocket Pool, this thing, I'm not in any position. I haven't taken any position in this one, but crazy looking chart here, pulling back hard today. Nonetheless, still a very interesting looking chart on Coinbase. But for me right now, just sticking to trading some BNB, I think the technicals look strong. I think, the Eastern indices look strong. And with those two things together, I think that Binance has a chance to outperform Bitcoin and the rest of the alts as well.
Yeah, I think longs just got a little bit horny over the weekend, just to say the least. I mean, if anybody's on Twitter, like horny longs and horny shorts are certainly a common term. So please don't be shocked that I said it.
Is this crypto Twitter? Because
Yeah,
we
this
expect
is
a little bit more.
this is to my BTC
professionalism.
Dom followers. This is for those people. So, but but to put it in maybe a better light, like people got too excited to get long. I mean, I think even we were on that trend last week where it was, we were certainly on the fence, but we were still leaning bullish. And when you're leaning bullish, you just start to kind of place longs inadvertently and think you're going to get free trades. And I think a lot of the market was at that time where it was like, oh, free money's here. And typically, especially in this type of market, free money is not going to come easy. Therefore, I think longs just at the lows previously, shorts got overextended and we blew their top and obviously, made new highs. So in this scenario, longs got very excited at highs and now we're obviously pressing them back down. But the key is if Bitcoin can hold 29K and ETH can hold 2030, I think we are still bullish. There's no reason to be scared or fearful until those levels are broken, because if those are broken back lower, we officially deviated above the highs, and deviation's very, very difficult to come back from. So that's just how I'm looking at it right now. And it's CJ Monty, maybe as we're wrapping it up, I don't have any trades right now. I'm not even looking for trades right now. I just want to see Bitcoin and Ethereum reclaim their weekly VWAPs and hold their Monday lows. If that is the case, then I'm getting back in. Else, my bias may shift into a few short positions heading into the week. And of course, we must be aware of any hawkish Fed governor speak as they try and cool the markets from the recent excitement in relation to inflation. So that's always worth looking out for as well.
I think that's the biggest thing on my horizon is the FOMC. So I think that's going to dictate what happens over the next 2 quarters.
And
quite honestly.
I forget exactly what date that is. Let me pull up.
May 3rd.
Exactly. So I think it's early May.
Yep.
So May 3rd. So the same day as the Avalanche Conference, CJ. So that would be a good day to close all your longs.
Up only.
It's going to be a big day for CJ.
Positions.
Oh, show us your mug.
Come on, you're spot long AVAX, CJ. Don't even give us that.
I'll show you my mug if you show me your mug.
That's a good one.
I got my mug. My mug's black, like CJ staring at me right now.
Look, my market or my mug says something about the market, and I don't want to jinx it. So
okay, all right, fair enough. All right, we're gonna go on to our last piece, and it's gonna be a moaning and bitching piece, guys. So let's take it away here. SEC news. SEC is charged in a lawsuit to Bittrex and its former CEO for operating an illegal exchange, brokerage, and clearing agency. And then for the folks who don't know, Bittrex US is ceasing operations in the United States come April 30th. So it's a big deal. They're an OG exchange. You got to give them props for being around for so long. I believe it's 2014. They've been around since. And this all stems. Oh, they're also charging Bittrex Global, by the way. And how are they doing that? They're doing that because the order book was shared with Bittrex US. So that's how the long arm of the US law has reached outside its boundaries and captured Bittrex Global into this. Guys, thoughts on the ever enforcing Securities and Exchange Commission? Sorry.
Well, he named Algo as a security, and there is live video. There's a recorded video of him speaking live
2 years ago.
Yeah, 2 years ago, about him both being friends with the Algorand founder and how Algorand is doing XYZ to forward blockchain technology, adoption, innovation, and it's quote unquote a great platform or a great blockchain, as Gary Gensler said. So it's fascinating to me that his lawyers and his team don't trawl through the internet like a degen without a job does. But they continue to bite themselves in the foot or shoot themselves in the foot. So, or maybe Gary Gensler likes biting feet too. So that's for you, BTC Dom. So, we of course don't know that. That's conjecture. Allegedly, he likes that. So, I really don't have anything else to say in regard to this. You know, it's like, how do you label some? I mean, of course, we can go on about the other securities allegedly and that are included in there, but it's how do you label things that you've spoken positively about, or even you could even be caught marketing to people because you're speaking about it positively from your position. Like presidents aren't allowed to go out and start marketing companies, and neither are politicians, for within their job description. So if he's sitting on stage saying, Algorand's great, go look into that. And then he's suing people 2 years later for trading it. I don't understand how you can, not get caught up in that court case. So
Yeah,
I think what happened here, Nick, is Gary Gensler is so uninformed on crypto that when he's talking about it, the first thing that comes into his mind is algo. So that's what he said both times. Literally, that's it. And also, they've been kind of forced to act because of everything that's happened in the last 6 months. So they're acting impulsively, I think, without doing much thought. So yeah, it seems like they didn't surf the internet and see him talking about algo. But I do think it is representative of the fact that he doesn't know a whole lot about this industry. He was saying something completely different 2 years ago than he's saying just yesterday. And I think that is, or this morning, and I think that is a bit concerning to see that lack of kind of insight into what you should be regulating for your, citizens. So,
yeah. I mean, let's face it. Just before 2 years ago, he was a blockchain professor at MIT. Just last year, he was BFFs with SBF. This year,
writing legislation with him.
Yeah, this year he's just screwing everybody. And by the way, I do want to remind folks, the SEC does not have the power to tell you. Gary Gensler doesn't have the power to tell you what's a security and what's not a security. That's ruled by a court. Okay. So I find it very irresponsible that he keeps doing this. This month after month, keeps saying that in the press. It's ridiculous. CJ, I see the mic creeping up to your mouth there.
That was not purposeful. I mean, I don't think I have much input other than what Nick and Monty said. I'm tired of looking through the SEC's drivel and their utter incompetence to protect Americans. And then they just turn around and yeah, like you said earlier, now they're screwing everybody. So hopefully that who put forth that policy today of basically going to fire Gary Gensler as SEC chairman? You guys heard about this?
The congressman. Who was that?
Warren something. Obviously not Elizabeth. But
article. I do have an article in regard to a few senator or a few congressmen, calling upon Gary Gensler to answer questions as to why he's not helped the industry in any way. He's only drawn more convoluted lines around things that have not helped anybody in any way.
Remember I think the argument when it came into office too.
Yeah, I mean, I think their argument was that he has not helped provide any growth or specificity towards capital formation, which is a big deal. If you're just drawing more steps and more rules and more lily pads for people to hop on to then deploy their capital intelligently, then that's not helping capital formation, right? You're just making it more difficult. There's more loopholes. You're pulling capital away because of the risks and the steps. And also when things are new, you have to have teams and legal completely, revitalize your entire process and stuff. So I think people, and I mean, this has even come up with donations for Biden's campaign. Top Democratic donors are also upset with Gary Gensler for not helping anything. And of course, they're not even angry over the fact that, they agreed. I mean, of course, we'll get into political lobbying and stuff just as a brush over here. But, when they're talking about the donations, hey, what are you going to do for me? Well, we're going to put some regulations in, but they won't hurt you too bad. Well, Biden is kind of going back on that, and nobody on either side is happy because none of the rules are legitimately helping more people get capital into areas to make investments and take intelligent risk to then grow the economy, create more innovation, create more jobs, etc. When you shackle that, GDP decreases, capital formation decreases, equities formation decreases. And how do you think markets grow? They grow with access. They grow with more capital entering the system. And right now, Gary Gensler is not assisting that. And, we could look back on this era of, just a bad economic and political policy that hurts the innovation and growth of America in the future and allows companies or countries like the UK to get to clamor back some of that capital that they lost, during Brexit. And UK's implementing, I think Coinbase was just tweeted today about how Brian Armstrong is in discussions with the UK government around their crypto regulations and around forwarding the industry. So just shocking to see America, which has generally been the biggest country to take the biggest risks and create the most innovation, is now saying, screw that. The Russians are interested in it, so it must be the worst thing on the planet. So
nobody quits while they're ahead. This is America, not France.
All right, guys, we've been at it for almost an hour. Thank you, everybody, for joining us today. Covered a lot. The experts will always guide you through what to look for and what to look at. And we thank them, CJ, Monty, Nick, for coming on. And we are going to be back on Thursday, folks. So we'll see you then. In the meantime, don't forget, visit tradethechain.com and marketrebellion.com/try crypto. Thanks, everybody.